Now, this is obviously a hotly debated topic. There's rationale and there's reason on both sides. Okay? There is reason on both sides. I'm not going to sit up here and scream into a microphone and act like there's no real reason as to why you would want the ball first, as to why you want the ball second. In one way is 100% right. But all things considered, I get the idea that if you take the ball first and you go down and you score a touchdown and the other team comes down and scores a touchdown, then ultimately you have the ball next to be able to kick a field goal and win the game. Understood. But you've not scored a whole lot in this game. I don't know if it takes a brain surgeon to look up at the scoreboard and realize we've not moved the ball a whole lot here. The chances of us catching this kickoff and on our very first possession, marching all the way down the field and scoring a touchdown isn't very high. It's just not. Because you haven't done it, I don't know, all damn game. So what is your position then? If you don't score a touchdown, what are you left with? You're left with Patrick Mahomes getting 4 downs to go all the way down the field to either tie the game or get themselves in field goal range. Personally, I don't see how you don't take the ball second. Because and again, hypotheticals are what they are. I'm not sitting here suggesting that if you automatically make the Chiefs get the ball first, that their possession would have been the exact same. But if it was, do you know who would have been the Super Bowl champion right now if the roles were reversed? If one team had the exact same possession when they got the ball first versus got the ball second? The San Francisco 49ers would be the world champions. Because I can tell you right now, Andy Reid is not going for it on 4th and 1 from his own 30-yard line. It seems impossible at the end of a game, more times than not, to stop a great quarterback and a great team that have done it before when they got 4 downs. The game's different when you have 4 downs. Completely different. You're never behind schedule. You're literally never behind schedule when you have 4 downs. So if you want to lay your head at night thinking to yourself that you made the right decision, be my guest. But ultimately, I think we all know that if you had to do it again, hindsight's easily 20/20, yes, but it wasn't hindsight for me. And lastly, I'll say this. It's come out, and it's pretty evident in post-game interviews that they didn't even know the rule. The players didn't know the rule. How on God's green earth can you be in a Super Bowl and be in a situation where your players didn't even know the rule?
I'm still confused on the rules. I'm glad you brought that up because I was just about to talk about it. And I was against your decision. We were texting in our group chat yesterday, and we were saying, and Trace was bringing home the point that why on earth would you elect to get the ball first? You want to play defense first. So the Chiefs, and this is Justin Reed. Justin Reed told The Ringer, the Chiefs had first discussed the new overtime rules as far back as training camp. Chris Jones told everybody the players were prepared for what to expect if the Super Bowl went to overtime. We talked through this for weeks. We were going to go for 2 at the end of the game if the 49ers scored on that opening drive. So they were going to go for 2 no matter what. There was probably not going to be a second overtime. And then this was the 49ers side. The 49ers did not do the same at all in terms of preparation. Multiple San Francisco players said after the game that they were not aware of the overtime rules, that they're different in the playoffs than they were in the regular season, and strategy discussions over how to handle the overtime period did not occur. Defensive lineman Arik Armstead said he learned the details of the postseason rule when it was shown on the Allegiant Stadium Jumbotron during a TV timeout after regulation. Kyle Juszczyk said he assumed the 49ers asked to receive when they won the toss because that's what you do in the regular season, when a touchdown wins the game. That's not the case. So they had no clue what the hell was going on. And this is why Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, Andy Reid, they deserve a lot of credit because they prepare for every single little thing that happens in these football games. And it always works out in their favor because they're always prepared. They know what to expect. This was. I mean, again, I'm not going to try to kill Shanahan up here, but that's pathetic. I mean, us as fans, we don't know the rules. I'm still completely. I'm not entirely sure. The way it was explained to me was the first 2 overtime periods were to be the first half, essentially. And then if it got to halftime, it would switch. That's how it was explained.
Yeah, listen,
to me.
it's a new game. Think of it that way. It's literally a new game. You start in the first quarter. If you get to halftime, you go to halftime. Then you basically have roles reversed. It's sudden death after the first possession by both teams, just to be clear. Right? That's when theoretically the old Super Bowl rule or the old postseason rules would have been in full effect. Nobody would have been confused. Field goal ends it. That's what it ultimately would have been. When you have the special teams as good as both of these teams have had, you could argue maybe Moody's nowhere near Butker, and I would agree with that. But my point is that a field goal 95% of the time was going to end the Super Bowl in a situation after the first possession. The only thing that was really different was that when Patrick Mahomes played Josh Allen in the playoffs, the only reason this rule changed is because they had an unbelievable game up to that point. Mm-hmm. And it felt like whoever won the coin toss wins the game because they go down and they kick a field goal. It would have been the exact same for Brock Purdy and the 49ers if they would have never changed the rules. We would have been sitting here today talking about how Patrick Mahomes, maybe the greatest quarterback that will ever play the game, is in a Super Bowl and he loses a coin toss and Brock Purdy marches it and we don't even ever get to see Patrick Mahomes with the football in overtime. These rules are terrible. They're the dumbest rules that there ever were. And maybe you could make the case, and rightfully so, that it is wrong. But they changed the rule. Thankfully for all of us, and especially Kansas City fans, they changed the rule.
Yeah.
So, simple. This is a simple thing. You practice, you prepare, you hear about coaches sleeping in their offices, and they're worried about this and that, and they're worried about the third string guy and this third string guy, and you can't even tell me that you don't have your team prepared to what they want to do in the Super Bowl if you get to overtime and you don't even know what you want when the coin toss happens? You got no clue? You got 5 or 6 prominent players, we're not talking about the backup kicker. We're not talking about the backup long snapper that somehow gets a microphone shoved in his face after the game and they ask him, what do you think about the overtime rules? And they say something stupid. No, we're talking about bona fide players that have no clue. We're reading the scoreboard about how the overtime works during a TV timeout. That is where when we talk about fans being overreactionary or fans that don't know what they're talking about, or you might question a manager that has been managing in Major League Baseball for 20 years. What do you know that he doesn't know? Well, example A, exhibit A. Sometimes the smartest guy in the room is the dumbest guy in the room in certain situations. You can't convince me under any circumstance that your decision to take the ball first and not know what you have to do when you get the ball next is a better decision, especially when you add in the fact that Patrick Mahomes is on the other side. Especially when you have that. I would have rather kicked the ball off and hoped my defense did what it did almost all game long. And what is that? Stop Patrick Mahomes when he doesn't have positive field position. It turns out, you know what they did? They actually did stop him.
They did.
They did stop him. But it was 4th and 1. And they ran a beautiful play. You got to give Andy Reid credit. He drew up some really good plays towards the end of that game. And, you could say whatever you want. Patrick Mahomes threw to guys that were wide open, and he did. The touchdown that he threw, the very first touchdown of the game, listen. You'll hear people say, well, I could have made that pass. Well, I'll be honest with you. We could have gone around the high school ranks and probably grabbed 50% of the high school kids in this country and told them, hey, you're going to take this snap and you're going to throw that to the guy, right? And then more than 50% of them would have completed that pass. So kudos to Andy Reid. The option play where he ran around the edge, I think that's where you got to give Patrick Mahomes credit, where he is a huge advantage over Brock Purdy, right? Patrick Mahomes been in this situation so many times that there's not really a whole lot of nerves there. And if there are nerves, they're nerves that have been settled to where he is able to function at a high capacity. And he made some plays with his legs that he should deserve credit for.
The one thing that I've seen a lot in the chat already about the 49ers taking the ball first was that their defense was needing a rest. But the key thing there is that there was a break in between going into overtime. There was a period of rest for them there, for them to even communicate this situation to the guy before they did the coin flip. That's what I don't understand at all, is that there was time. They just said they saw it on the big giant video board, and they still elected to take the ball first. That's what I don't understand, is like, you saw it before, you already had rest, and yet we're going to take this ball for – you're absolutely right on, if you're in that situation, you want to know what you need to get in order to win the ball game. If you can stop them and Mahomes and they kick a field goal in that 4th and 1, then you know you just need to go down and get into field goal range, and you're at least tying the ball game, which they would have ended up, hypothetically, they would have ended up doing the same thing, and they would have kicked a field goal, and it would just been sudden death after that. But at least you know, like, hey, we could go down and score a touchdown in the game instead of having to.
Well, the 4th and 1, to be clear, the 4th down that Kansas City went for was on their own side of the field.
Yeah.
They would have punted. And maybe you would argue that they wouldn't have. And I actually thought to myself, can we let's do a quick little backtrack here. If we're going to crush the Dan Campbells and the analytics of the world, I do want to give Shanahan some credit on this. He decided to go for it on 4th and 3 in field goal range.
Yep.
And he got it. And they ended up scoring a touchdown. So, if we want to bring up the one side, we should bring up the other side. But my point to you, Casey, is that I don't know. That's a fair question. I don't know whether or not they would have. But if the Kansas City Chiefs were in the same spot they were in, and they were the first team that got the ball, and it was 4th and 1, do they go for it? If they don't get it, San Francisco kicks a field goal right where they're at. Game's over. But obviously, in the back of your mind, when you punt the football away, they have to go down the field, they kick a field goal, they win. Do you think they would have gone for it?
Yeah. I think, and again, not that we'll get to Tony Romo in a second.
Right.
But Tony was saying, I think for a large portion of that 4th quarter for both teams, he was like, well, this is 4-down territory. This is 4-down territory. I think no matter what, Kansas City was going to go for it on 4th and 1. I don't see a scenario where they take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, give the ball to Jake Moody, who set the record for longest field goal in a Super Bowl, then was broken by Harrison Butker. But he was drilling kicks all game long, dead center. Obviously, the extra point was a miscue, but Jake Moody could have made a kick from midfield. So really, you're punting the ball away, and they've got 25 yards to get within a field goal range, a potential game-winning field goal. They weren't going to do it. So no, I absolutely think they were going to go for it no matter what in that situation.